So we'll talk about R0 and mentorship. So essentially, the general idea is you have a mentor, and here there in red is not a political statement. So this, then essentially, if they can, essentially, if more than one susceptible individual can be converted by a mentor, right? And what this will mean to going probably all the way to the PhD level, then essentially your basic reproductive number is 1. If you do this more than 1.1, right, you are in somebody's committee, and then essentially you are replacing more than yourself for the next generation, and if this continues, then you have an epidemic, it grows, and population becomes established. There is a book about this by Gladwell that started essentially trying to explain why a crime had gone down in New York. And he's not a mathematician, he's just a journalist. He's not, that book is now his second edition. It's called The Tipping Point. I want to get a picture, but I couldn't find it. And the general idea is that he has used this now successfully to go and motivate a lot of people in industries about what you need to change the situation in the workforce, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the kind of situation. So he uses this model. So for some of you that could not understand my accent, I'm going to give you a little picture here. So this R0 is equal to 2. So you have 2 infectious individuals. They are unhappy. They still don't have PhD students. But now they produce 2 students. They become happy. Each one of them produces 2 students. So you can see you have a population that grows. That's basic reproductive number greater than 1. On the other hand, if on the average we do not replace ourselves, which at this point it seems what is going on, then even though you might have a lot of them, then the next generation you will have less, you will have less, and you have less, and eventually your population will disappear. So this is the sort of community that, that you start. So this is the basic reproductive number greater than 1. So if you cross this threshold, right, then you grow. And this is the level, this is the critical mass of individuals that are part of your population. That's how many individuals you have in your community. So this is very nice. This is very simple. Can we do better than that? Right? And the answer is yes, we can do better than that. And I'm going to explain you why we can do better than that. And essentially, we can do much better than that if we become more welcoming at all levels. If we develop an educational system where hierarchies are not important. You know, I always, get surprised, when you ask a professor a problem in a class, he assigns a problem, nobody can do it. Then he goes into the blackboard and solves it. Oh, this is so trivial, right? Well, he's been doing this for 20 years. He shows the problem. Maybe he has a solution book. There is a tremendous distance. There is a tremendous disconnection in what we are and what we really are, right? Which, in generally speaking, frankly, we're not very smart, right? And what we project to our students. And it's this tremendous disconnection that separates us a lot from our communities, when in fact what we know is that most of our students are a lot smarter than we are, right? And putting ourselves in a position where we don't have control over the class, where we don't have control over the knowledge, where we don't have control over the teaching, is something that we are not willing to accept, right? And we know a lot of things, or we act in a completely disengaged fashion. How many of you can really write a computer program, right? And then look at your students. Most of them are 10 times better, at least, than we are, right? And so forth. We can go on and on the line. And that's a part of the problem. So what we try to do is create a community where we actually destroy these kinds of rules. And that's essentially the spirit is associated with people call cooperative learning. And I'm not trying to tell you what this school might or might not be. I just tell you how we have implemented in some fashion. But essentially, the general idea is the students are responsible, and the students here means everybody, not only for their own learning, but for the learning and progress of the community. So part of how we have implemented this pipeline effort has to do with this. So let me just give you a little idea about our pipeline program. So the general motivation is the typical motivation. We want to produce more PhDs, but we want to also produce individuals that eventually, at least some of them, can play a leadership role nationally. So that's part of the idea. And then essentially what we do is to provide not one summer research experience, but sequential research experiences. Ideally, we will have a system where this process goes continuously all year round. It just doesn't, in the summer, you get a chance to think in the summer. The rest of the year, you can't think. So it's a process that is continuous learning about that. And we have to figure out ways of doing it, not having RUs that only function for the summer, but to have some sort of a system that promotes learning at all levels. So I had to show a picture from Cornell. This is the second one. But now we have moved, and now we're doing this in collaboration with Los Alamos National Laboratory, the Santa Fe Institute, as well as several other universities, including the University of Arizona also. So essentially, this is the goal. The goal is provide mentorship in an environment where mentorship goes both ways. And this is very, very important because as you as faculty want to become better mentors, there is no better people that can mentor you than your own students. So how is this done? Change the initial conditions and change the rules of the game. Okay? So what you have to do is put on the graduate students, postdocs, faculty, in a system where the teaching, learning, and levels of contribution are not a function of who set the rules of the game. A system where success comes from a community effort. And a lot of you, particularly you in the sciences, this is really impossible. It isn't. We just don't really want to think that way because that will force us to become students again. And we know how hard that is. So essentially, how do we change the environment? Essentially, the students in each group, they work in. We provide them with some technical tools for a short period of time, 4 weeks. But then they select their own project. They decide what they're going to study. And we don't make any effort to change what the students want to do. They select their own project. They select their own teammates. So now if a student wants to look at the impact of alcohol on the brain, and I know nothing about neurobiology, I'm in trouble. I can tell you, you should really work on this topological problem because I know a lot about that. No, the students set the rules. At that moment, I become a participant, somebody with a lot more experience, but not necessarily somebody smarter or more clever or more intelligent. That changes the game. And now I'm engaged in the research effort of the students. I am a participant with more experience and more support, et cetera, et cetera. When I first ran this program, my postdocs, when I told them what we were going to do, they wanted to quit. They didn't want to know. We want to know what the projects are going to be beforehand. We don't want to look stupid in front of the students. We want to know what the answers are. Well, I think that's part of the problem. And then what you try to do is to create quickly a community. So we have gone even from giving them a one-day survival course, all sorts of activities where also the faculty participate. And you will not be surprised that we can't do very well at this, so they have to help us, and things like that. And that creates already a community where we interact, the students and faculty and postdocs essentially become all involved in the community success. Now, if we do this, what happens mathematically? What happens mathematically is that instead of having a curve like this, which is a pretty good curve, what happens is that this curve changes to something like this. Instead of getting what is called a forward bifurcation, you get a backward bifurcation. So now this is R0 greater than 1. Now you see where the system goes depends on initial conditions. So if you have a critical mass, now you see a rapid growth of the community, right? And in order to maintain it, you can maintain it even at this level of reproductive success. And this is what is very important. This is what is very, very essential. And that's what creates when you promote a community of learners. So cooperative learning can create resilient communities of learners. Communities of learners can survive even when conditions are unfavorable, right? Because you don't, before if R0 was less than 1, the community will disappear. Now you have a community that has some life of its own. I have a lot more things to say, but I'm going to stop here.